Three, two, one. Welcome to the Lightforge. This is ADWCTA.
This is Merps, and I have to admit, I'm still not used to doing live light forges.
Have we ever done a live Lightforge?
Whoa, yes, we have done many of them, but last week
Oh,
was a live one, wasn't it? No, it
no,
wasn't. It wasn't.
no.
It was
Last
not.
week was 4th of July. You were definitely
Oh
somewhere else. We
gosh,
definitely did that before. See, I don't even know if we've ever done a live one. This could all be an illusion.
wow.
You don't know if you only listen to this as a podcast and you never watch us on Twitch. We could just be faking this whole like we have an audience thing.
That's true. That's so true. Anyways, glad to be live this week. It is amazingly hot outside, so I'm just glad to be inside talking Hearthstone.
Yeah. And Hearthstone is right now on the cusp of something amazing. It's called the announcement of the next expansion. And I say on the cusp because it hasn't happened yet, so we don't get to speculate yet.
Yeah, I think, man, we've been talking about this meta for so long. I'm definitely ready for the next expansion, and just because this expansion didn't really introduce any new mechanics, right? I'm
Yeah.
ready for some new mechanic to add some more variety into the game, and also I'm sort of just tired of the current cards that we have.
It's because they're all tentacles. I really hope, like, there was that, like, speculation that the next expansion is going to have something to do with the Old Gods too, and I really hope there are no more tentacles. I'm done with tentacles, right? Like, Hearthstone right now, it's all about spiders and tentacles.
Yes.
And that's really not the feel of the Hearthstone that I came into, that I fell in love with in Classic, which was much more about, like, not taking candles and Tazvingos.
When was Cabal Geomancer ever like Taz Dingo was a big part of it, but when was Cabal Geomancer ever part of it?
You did not know my strategies before I became an infinite player, man.
I obviously did not.
Plus one to my Flame Strike. Dude, best card ever.
Yeah.
Until I realized you could just hero power ping for the same effect, and that it wasn't really much of a combo.
Well, no, when he flooded with all of those 5 health minions, then that's when you're gonna get him.
When all the Yetis came down, huh? Yetis, best card back in the day?
That's
I was
true.
prepared.
That's true. Anyways, I think we're all ready for the new meta, but until then, we are stuck with the same meta.
And let's talk about an issue that's gotten a lot of attention in the last couple days, and it's about all the metas. It's actually specifically about the metas, like, well, from the very beginning, right? From Classic, but more specifically a jump that apparently happened in TGT, and we're talking about the difference in win rates between going first and having the coin in the card. So, Hearth Arena via Crip released some stats, and we've known from Arena Mastery, from Ben Brode, from Hearth Arena, everything all along that on average for players, about 5% is the difference of win rate between going first and going second for like the average player in the arena. This has been, it's not exactly new news, but the new information that came out is, at least for the information Hearth Arena has been tracking, the win rate for going first versus the win rate for going second with the coin has expanded from like 5 to 9,
Yeah, so
approximately. So that's significant, right?
yeah, yeah. And the biggest jump was in TGT, apparently, where going from GVG into TGT, all of these letters, man, it's so hard. Basically, from Classic all the way up to GVG, it stuck around this 5%, and then it basically jumped to about 8% starting in TGT, and then now it's at 9%. So we are trending towards this direction where if you have the coin, you are at a severe disadvantage.
And so before we get to the jump and why that may have happened, let's just talk generally, just to set everything up in this deep fried meta, where we deep fry the meta about turns, I guess, like the position of going first. And it's a point that I think a lot of people don't think about when it comes to the arena, but Hearthstone is not a symmetrical game. Both players are not in the same position, and in almost any turn-based game that's sequential, like, you're not in the same position because someone has to make the first move. And so Hearthstone gets around this by giving you a coin and a card. So you have one extra card than your opponent, And you have the ability to take one turn before your opponent takes that turn. And there's some random like coin synergies thrown in for good measure. And that helps you kind of get to the same level. There are many games in which you don't get anything for going second, right? You're just expected to only win 30% of the time. And the games exist and the people play them and people, you know, they bitch about them a little, but it's not a huge deal, right? And Hearthstone has gotten this. Like, one of the things that I think the Team 5, the Hearthstone development team, was very proud of was how close they got this game to 50% win rate for going first and going second for the average player. So it was never a huge problem, but it was always like a known issue where, yes, going first does help you a bit. And breaking it down, it's really because going first gives you 9 more mana than going second over the course of 10 turns. And there's just not a lot of ways you can kind of fight back against 9 extra tempo, right?
Yeah, it's really tough. And like you said, they hope to balance it out by giving player 2 more options via the extra card. And also the flexibility and the choice, right?
Right.
So you're able
because you also get to mulligan away an extra card too, right? You don't just like get an extra card at the end.
Right. And you can also choose when you power out using that coin. So you have more options throughout the span of the game because of the extra card. You have extra choices at the beginning with the mulligan, and you have an extra choice of when you can power out using the coin. And they're hoping that if you're a good player, you know, that should even out. But then, you know, that gets to the second point, that you actually need to use your selections well, and you actually have to use the coin well, right? Otherwise, it can actually be a burden at the same time.
You have extra decisions to make as the player with the coin. You have one more mulligan decision to make. You have fancier mulligan decisions to make because now you have to take into consideration the coin when you mulligan. And then you have an extra card that you could play and a coin that you can always definitely play starting on the first time you get to use it. So that's like, I want to say triple or quadruple the amount of decisions player 1 has to make. And as we always say, the more skilled you are, the more decisions you want to make. So does that mean as a good player, you want to be player 2? Not quite.
No.
It doesn't quite overcome the gap, but it does limit the gap. Like, for example, as player 2, even after TGT, I win less than 5% more games going first than going second. I just checked my stats after seeing this just to see what things are, and like my gap is not that big, and I play all classes evenly. So it's not like, you know, I'm just playing warrior all the time. In fact, if anything, like it kind of lends credence to our whole thing, right? Where the more decisions you have to make, the more the coin is, the better of a player you are, the more you do okay-ish compared to someone who's faced with all these decisions and is not making the most optimal decision. That makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense just because it means that the coin and the extra card in your hand, they have a variable amount of value, right? And it depends on how much you extract out of it. So better players, if you make the coin worth a lot, then obviously, you know, you're going to win more. And for other players, you know, if they just use it to like coin out a hero power on turn 1, probably not going to win a lot with the coin then.
I hope no one's coining out a hero power on turn 1 unless you're the rogue.
Well, you know, if they drop a 2/1, I could see it. But
yeah.
Other than that, it's just like shaman, turn 1, coin, totem. Yeah. Got it. Bam. Immediate board presence.
Yeah, and we've dedicated a couple of Lightforges to the topic of the coin. Lightforge 11 was about coin usage. Lightforge 27 was about simple mulligans, which doesn't have anything to do with the coin, but it's about the mulligan phase. And we just did Lightforge 45, which is about advanced mulligans, which definitely considers the coin. So we've already covered a lot about what you should be doing when you have the coin or in the mulligan stage. This is more of a meta thing and just looking at why going first still kind of gives you an advantage at the end of the day. So the main new information that came out, this is all old news, right? Like, we could have told you this 2 years ago. We could have told you this, you know, a year before the first Lightforge, and no one would have blinked twice. But the new news is that this issue has apparently gotten worse, and mostly for bad players or for average players. And that is the issue that since TGT has come out, the player with the coin is now at a almost double disadvantage than they used to be. So why is that, Merps?
Oh, I don't think it's like one simple answer, but first of all, I mean, look, if you look to see what advantage the player one has, it's this extra mana. I mean, that mana is basically more impactful now. You know, it's more impactful. There's also a higher variety of cards, and with that, you have like just better cards out there as well. And I think that like as sort of basically as cards get more diverse and as decks get like more diverse as well, that mana matters more and more. It's less so about the cards themselves and more so about just you being able to use up all that mana on these cards, because the cards get sort of like blurred together, right? It's not just Bloodfin Raptors and Yetis and Boulderfist Ogres anymore. It's just the entire spectrum with battle cries and death rattles and all of this stuff. And at the end, the 9 mana will just win out.
Yeah. Okay. So just to clear that up a bit, so you're saying that because there's more variance in the cards that you're going to play, having more tempo overall matters more?
No, not so much the variance of. So what I'm saying is cards are just like they're blending together, right? Like there's just so many cards that like your deck versus your opponent's deck, like it's just a mishmash of cards. So the mana will win out against the extra options at the end.
Whereas before, the cards were more different.
No, there were less cards. So, for example, you can play around cards a little bit more, right? You can like anticipate a little bit better. You can plan a little bit better.
Okay, so you're saying that there's less skill now than there used to be because just most cards you don't play around. It's just not worth it for you to play
that's what
around.
I mean when decks are sort of like just a mishmash now,
Okay,
right? Like there's just so much stuff so that the mana matters more than like your choices.
Yeah, so there was an element of skill that was much more so when there's a smaller card pool, which is that you could kind of anticipate exactly which cards are coming out, right? Like on turn 4, your opponent literally had like 5 choice of cards to play. So it was a lot easier to play around that when they would not play anything besides like a Yeti, a Dark Iron Dwarf, a Water Elemental, or like, 2 other 4-drops that you can kind of anticipate. On the other hand, now they can play pretty much anything. You're more vague in the anticipations, and so that element of skill is kind of out the window because you shouldn't be doing it, right? If you're like a skilled player, you shouldn't be doing it, and if you're an unskilled player, you wouldn't be doing it anyway. So we're evening that, and so it's more the case that going first, the 9 mana matters more. I don't know if I fully buy that, because I don't think there's a direct relationship between having extra tempo and playing around cards. I think for whatever like skill that takes away, there's other skill that comes into play when it comes to like playing the meta and when it comes to playing the general big picture, because it is one like set of skills to be playing around specific cards, but knowing the big picture is another set of skill, and when one matters less, the other matters more. So I don't think it's like a raw loss of a skill. You are losing a dimension of it, but I think it just makes the other side matter more. And I don't know if having more mana makes it more. What I see as kind of a bigger issue is the snowball effect. The snowball effect has gotten a lot worse since TGT was introduced, which is around where this jump happened, right? That the Inspire mechanic is definitely snowball. A lot of things are snowball now in terms of the cards, and they're not snowball on turn 1 necessarily, right? Like the game has always been snowball with like an Argent Protector or a Fiery War Axe or something, right? In the very early turns. And that, if anything, is happening less and less as those like really amazing old cards get get more and more diluted without really being replaced, right? There's no necessarily like an Argent Protector level good of card. At least not for you have sealed champs. Like you have stuff that works around it, but nothing quite hits like that level. And same with like Fiery War Axe and other kinds of early cards, right? Backstabs. You don't get exact replacements of those cards as those good cards get diluted. Instead, what happens is the snowball is happening later and later in the game. When does Murloc Knight snowball? On turn 6, or probably after that. So rather than before, where you can snowball from controlling the board early, which the coin allows you to do. Remember, the coin gives you one key turn earlier than your opponent. So if you are going to snowball on turn 2, having a coin is better than not having a coin. Because you can then put out a 2 and coin out a 2, and then you're snowballing, right? Like, we know the Paladin, which used to live on the, Bloodfen Raptor followed by the Argent...
Protector.
The Argent Protector, yes.
Yep.
Followed by the Argent Protector play. We know that that was a combo, and that was a highly successful combo. And as that dropped, the combos that are replacing it, when it comes to snowballs, are for the most part in the late game. Now, what works in the late game? Well, going first works in the late game, because going second only gives you the board for like 1 or 2 turns before the tempo kind of like catches up for going first. So by the time you're at turn 6 or turn 7, going first has the tempo advantage again. Because they have had like 5-6 more turns of extra mana than going second has. So because all the tempo is being shifted to, all the snowballs being shifted later in the games, it's swinging more in favor of the side that has more tempo going into the mid game and the late game.
Yeah, I could definitely buy into that argument. Like, and with the dilution of removals, right, and especially sort of AOE removals, and to some extent, even spot removals as well. You have all of these different snowball cards, and with very few removals, you can get rid of like the first one, right? Like you can get rid of the first snowball effect, but you can't get rid of the second snowball effect. And if you're player 2, you're always trying to play reactively. So you need so much removal, or you are just going to lose to their snowball effect.
Yeah. I think that's right. So that's kind of my theory and Merps' theory. I guess we have kind of different theories on why going second is getting worse for the average player. For good players, I'm not sure that's like necessarily happening. Like I still have a number of classes where going second, even after TGT, like just looking at all my stats from TGT onwards, where going second is better than going first for me personally. Variance and all that, but I've had 300 games with all of these classes since then. They're like just in case anyone's curious, it's like Shaman, it's Warrior, it's Druid, it's Mage, hugely Mage. So those are the classes, and so that's a fair number of classes. You guys know I play all classes evenly, and the other ones don't have huge discrepancies either, except of course Warlock. And Hunter for me, but I may be playing Hunter wrong. Hunter has a huge disparity for me. But Warlock is the one that's really easy to solve for, right? Like, you wonder why going first with the Warlock is much better than having the coin as the Warlock. It's because you have a ton of 1-drops. And if you have a ton of 1-drops, going first, which usually skips turn 1, no longer skips turn 1, and then you're rolling, right? Like, right. You're doing well with that.
Yeah, and for the Warlock, you're going to draft a lot of 1s because you can reload with hero power. And if you have 1s, it makes so many cards from Power Overwhelming to Demon Fire, just much more powerful. So it makes a lot of sense. And Warlock is the one class that can probably, we keep on talking about this 9 mana thing, but Warlock is probably the only class that can actually use up like 8 out of the 9 mana, right? Other classes are probably using up like 6 or 7 out of that 9 mana. You're probably hanging mana during a turn or 2.
Yep, and one of the things that the advantage of the coin is that you don't hang mana in the beginning because you can like kind of piece together things a bit better, especially if you anticipate well. Like that's not surprising. And one of the findings that came out was that Warrior and Priest had like a low effect for coin, and other classes like Warlock and Paladin have like high effects. And I don't want to make too much of that. Like, a lot of people are taking that as if it's canon, But you have to remember this is one. This is like Hearth Arena stats. This is the average player, right? Like their win rate for Priest is like 35% win rate. I can't even imagine that, and like how those players would play with the coin.
Yeah, it's
And
around like 35% with the coin, like 42% or something.
yeah, like
without the coin, something
you
like
don't want
that.
those players to be the bulk of your decision making when it comes to like balancing the game. That's not like the right path to kind of like go down. And in addition, this isn't even just like Blizzard global stats. It's stats from a system that actually has an algorithm that gives you a deck. And that algorithm will affect what kind of decks they get, right?
Right,
So
right.
like Hearth Arena and us, like all the tier lists kind of have Warlock one drops is higher than in other classes, just like even neutral ones. That has a big effect. If you're telling people to pick more one drops as Warlock, they're gonna do better going first. If you're telling people to pick more one drops, as like Hunter or Warrior or whatever, they're going to do better going first. And it doesn't stop there, right? Hearth Arena's algorithm does like a bunch of stuff. So it depends on how good the algorithm is for a particular class, how well it performs relative to the other classes. And, knowing quite a bit about how that thing works, it's pretty suspect when it comes to how it's interpreting the effect of the coin. I'm not gonna go deep into it, but it's not very sophisticated in its interpretation. It uses a lot of averages that are non-dynamic, and that's all going to affect the end product. Like I think it's a fact that Hearth Arena just builds you decks that are better for going first than for going second. So that will also magnify your disparity if you are a user. And on the flip side, it means if you're not a user and there's enough people who use it in the meta, that you'll be on the other end of the spectrum, right? You'll do a little bit better going second than going first relative to the average player.
Right. I mean, it's very important, and I think you make a really good point. Everyone within, this is not a random sampling, right? This is a sample of people who have choose to use this program and probably follow the advice of the program. So it's double filtered.
Right.
Through you can even say it's like quadruple filtered towards like more choices, but they choose to use this program number one, and they choose probably most of the people probably take the advice of the program. So so it depends on how the program is sort of funneling them, right?
Yeah.
So
like there's a factor that you can't just like kind of like say, oh, but caveat this. It's not like a little caveat. It affects everything, right? Like it literally affects the kind of decks that you're measuring. So I would say that if you were talking to Ben Brode, his effects will be probably less pronounced.
Right.
But that's just I don't have any like.
Right. I think the one thing we can sort of take away is that it seems as though after TGT or so, like the effect has gotten bigger, right?
Yeah, I think when you get as narrow as classes, that it really starts, the effects really start adding up from the algorithm.
Yeah.
And you're going with how well this algorithm drafts this kinds of do you really want that information? Maybe you do if you use the algorithm, but overall, if you're Blizzard, I wouldn't consider that. And speaking of Blizzard, what do you think Blizzard should do? We know that there is a problem. We've expressed that we're a little skeptical about the specific class breakdowns and how much weight to really give to those, given the source of the data. But what about what should Blizzard do about the existing 5%?
Okay, so my idea right now, if you look at the advantages that player 2 has, you get one extra card and you get the coin, right? I think you can improve their chances by giving them an extra card only for the mulligan. So right now, player 2 gets 4 cards to mulligan and then 4 cards back, right? And you can get rid of the 4 cards, or you can keep all 4 cards. My suggestion is they add a 5th card to it, so you have 4 cards plus this 5th card, and you have to get rid of at least 1 card in the mulligan. So at the very end, you always end up with a 4-card hand. So it doesn't increase the cards that are in your hand when you start turn 1, but it does give you an extra card to Mulligan, which I think will help out your curve.
Right, and it will only help out your curve because you can't be.
Yeah,
It doesn't quite help you to like be able to keep like let's say a Doctor Boom or something for later on because you'll still only get 4 cards, so you're still missing out on your curveness if you are keeping a large card. It will allow you to kind of like see another card for your curve.
It'll help you get that zombie chow, basically.
Right.
It'll help you draw your zombie chow for turn 1.
It'll help you like combos, maybe early game combos. Because you see an extra card, you're more likely to piece them together. Okay, I can see that. I would do something different because if you look at how player 2, like once you recognize that player 2 being the person that goes second is actually disadvantaged, you see how Blizzard has been making amends to player 2, right? They get a coin, which is tempo and it's flexible. They get a card, which is an extra card for value for card advantage. So the only thing they're not getting in terms of like just stuff that we can possibly give them, the only thing they're not getting is health. That's the only other resource in the entire game that they have not gotten an advantage of, and they are behind, right? If you look and you're thinking, over the course of 10 of the first 10 turns, we're going to lose 9 mana to our opponents. Well, we're probably going to be behind on the board, right? In the late game, and that's kind of the problem that we were talking about with all the snowball cards, all the late game snowball cards that were added. It's this late game snowball, and that deals damage. But we do have an extra card, so maybe we can recover in like the late game, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe in the late game after that, like turn 8 to 9 to 10, we can actually recover with our card advantage and our extra option. Because having a card in your hand, as we discussed a couple Lightforges ago, also gives you an extra option, which when you only have 2 or 3 cards, like that's pretty big, right? So maybe we can actually use our advantage from the card later, but to do that we need to like be less concerned with our health, right? We need to survive a bit longer, so you add a little bit of health and it'll help that.
How much health are we talking about here?
Ooh, off the top of my head I want to say 5.
Okay.
Just because it's a nice number, and maybe not make like the max health 5, maybe just have it be like almost like a bonus health for now. Well, I didn't want to like armor, right? But I don't want to make it armor because I don't want to make it breaks the game for warrior for like constructed if you do that. But like just like temporary health that it doesn't count as you being hurt if it hurts you, and it doesn't count as any of that. You can't heal it up.
Just give them a bubble.
Yeah, right, like a bubble, a 5 damage bubble.
Yeah. So I like the different philosophies that we had. So my, I guess, strategy was to kind of make one of their current advantages even a little bit more powerful, right? Mulligan and cards.
Right.
So that's sort of the advantage that player 2 has. And my solution was, all right, let's beef this up a little bit. And you looked at sort of, player 2 already has options and cards.
Tempo and the ability to take the board.
Yeah. They just don't have the they don't have the consistent.
Right, they have early game tempo.
Yeah, they have
presumably
early game tempo, maybe, depending on their deck. But basically, you picked a different category to give them an advantage with. So something that they right now is on completely even grounds.
Right.
So I think that's pretty interesting. And typically for game design, I think that's the way that you should do it. Although HP is something that I think is very. It gets a little bit dangerous, I think, because this whole entire game was made sort of centered around 30 HP, right?
Yeah.
Like it's really centered around 30 HP. It's like every single game. It depends on how for example, if you're playing an FPS, it depends on how big the map is, right?
Right.
And exactly the distances that players can engage each other in. And if you just change those dimensions by a little bit, you have to change, some characters just become OP. Everything changes, right? So I think that's by touching something that Blizzard hasn't touched, and maybe that's one of their general philosophies. 30 health is just 30 health. That is set in stone. I'm always a little bit weary about doing something like that. But
Yeah, but I'm my basis going into this is that the game is asymmetrical. The game is not symmetrical, and so the fact that both players have 30 health is inherently unfair. In the same way, if both players had the same number of cards, it's inherently unfair. Or if they had the same number of mana each turn, it's inherently unfair.
yeah,
Because it is a resource, you going second allows player one to take the initiative and to pick the way to attack your resources, so to speak. And so you need a little bit more of every single type of resource. So you're saying that there may be some kind of inviolable law of everything is balanced at 30 health, which is what Blizzard started with, and maybe that's how they did the math back in the drawing board, but they shouldn't, because the game is not a symmetrical game, and the game can't be a symmetrical game when it's turn-based sequentially. So if you can start with 30, so you should not start with 30 health. You should start with 2 variable healths, or something around 30 health, and then make 128 and 132 or something. Because you do have to balance for that factor. Now, visually, you could argue that it looks a little weird to have one person have 35 health and one have 30, but it's also a little weird for one side to have 4 cards and one side to have 3. For one side to have this weird extra card called the coin. Like, Blizzard's already broken all those barriers. So, having like a 5 health bubble or like a 3 health bubble or whatever, right? Like, I don't think that's messing with the design philosophy any more than the stuff that they've already done, and it should have been part of their initial design philosophy, I think.
I get what you mean, that this game is asymmetrical, but there is symmetry in terms of players' cards are the same, right? Like, a Dark Iron Dwarf is a Dark Iron Dwarf on both sides. A Flame Wreath Faceless is a Flame Wreath Faceless on both sides, and that, I think, makes, like...
But your resources are different. Your resources that you use to summon them are different. Your resources in which how often you get them are different because of the cards. And so your resource and how much effect they have on the board can be different.
Right.
In fact, your actual board state is different depending on what part of the game you're in based on the sides you're on.
I think it vastly changes the effectiveness of cards if you change your HP, right? It's just like if you change a distance within the map of the firing distance, suddenly, like, to make a Overwatch reference, like suddenly perhaps like Soldier 76 is really bad now because it's like too close distance or a little bit too far distance, right? Yeah. And then suddenly, like, because the character / card is the same, but the one of the quote foundational basically one of the foundational variables is changed, then it just ruins the game because of that.
But you're not like, this isn't like Overwatch or any of that. You're not selecting a card. You don't know if you're going first or second. So it's weighed equally. No matter how you change, it's not going to upset. It's going to change how good a card is overall, but it's not going to, like, you can't change cards based on which side you're on. You know what I'm saying?
But then imagine it's like if you're, if you choose like, so.
And I would say it's already the case, right? Like, think about Miracle Rogue, right? Think about like going second and going first have 2 different playstyles for pretty much every constructed deck.
Yeah, it's a different playstyle, but I don't think you want to make like all these cards in the game basically different. Like, the effect is less powerful.
But it is. I'm saying it already is. I'm saying once you mess with the tempo, it already is. Once you mess with the card advantage, it already is. You're not playing the same game as player 1 as player 2, and all of your cards are of different effectiveness as it is in the current game. Adding the health pool obviously makes it even, bigger of a difference in a different way, but we're not starting at the place in which everything's equal.
No, you're not starting at it, but like changing cards, that's inevitable, right? And cards are going to have different impacts for different classes. Changing the health, depending on whether you go first or go second, that's a sweeping change that
it's the same as giving someone extra mana. It's the same as giving someone an extra card. I don't see it as any different.
Right. No, it is the same, but it is something that like dips into a different pool. Whereas, like, if you dip into a different pool, the consequences.
Right, but so why is the health pool different than the tempo? I would say the tempo pool is the most important pool.
No, it is important, but you've already dipped in that pool.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. If you're starting and building a game from scratch, right, like a card game from scratch, why would you say it's okay to dip in the tempo pool, it's okay to dip in the card advantage pool, but it's not okay to dip in the life pool?
Because I think they realize how important tempo is in terms of like you can't.
So then if life is even less important, why not dip in it if you're already dipping it? Like if you've already like broken the seal on something this important, what's the problem of messing with something like down here to
Because
provide
breaking
its
the seal is a bigger impact than messing with anything, no matter how great that impact is. You know?
I very heavily disagree on this point in game design. I don't think there's anything sacred about this, except maybe visually. Like I could see people like thinking that health like looks different. But as the game stands, I think there's no way you can create a game that has sequential turns, have the same health pool for both sides, and make it even. One side is always disadvantaged health-wise. Namely the second side.
Yeah, I mean,
always.
There's advantages. One side is always going to have an advantage. For me, I'm just like, I think dipping into a new resource is going to make such a huge difference that we shouldn't do it. But we'll see. We'll see if Blizzard does anything at all. I don't know.
Yep. I'm just saying, like, if you wanted me to make a fair game, that's what I would do. And because it preserves not only the fairness, but also the different avenues of attack and defense and the whole flexibility of the game. That's the change to make. And, it doesn't... It's going to look a little weird because your numbers are going. You're like, one will have a little bubble with like extra health and one won't, right? But I don't know. I think it looks weird. Like, I think the coin is a really weird thing. That one side just like gets an extra card that's a coin, right? Like when you first heard about it, you're like, oh, that's weird. And by now we're all really used to it. But that's not like, that's a pretty innovative thing Blizzard did. That's not like a normal thing that like all the card games have.
Yeah.
Like card games give you extra cards. That's a pretty typical thing that card games do, or like an extra mulligan or something like that. But they don't give you like an extra special card that gets you some tempo back. Like that was quite innovative on Blizzard's part, and I really like it. But you can't like we've gone too far at this point to come back and say like, oh, we want to preserve the purity lookingness of both sides, So I don't know. It's like I think we've already gotten past that point where the sides are recognizably not equal and not the same game.
I mean, my argument has never been about like preserving like the purity or even like the aesthetics of it. I really couldn't care about the aesthetics. I just think that you've been building a game sort of so all around this, and because they've been building it around like you've sort of punctured into this tempo world, right? Like I'm like, we should leave the health part alone because I think puncturing any part of that will have bigger ramifications than altering with this tempo world.
I mean, I think you can deal with it. I think that's the fair way to do it.
You can always deal with it.
No, not like as a player. I mean, as a game designer. I think it's just one more thing you have to consider when you're making your cards. But if you want a fair game and you want to preserve all your different avenues, because right now, like aggro, for example, it just works differently depending on where you're going first or second. It works very differently, and if going second gives you an additional like health pool, it would work a bit more similarly. Like I don't know the exact number of health, but there is a break-even number. And I don't mean like run Monte Carlos until you find it, but I mean that just mathematically, algorithmically, there is a number. Anyway, let's move on to that's a lot of time talking about what's the difference between going first and going second. But let's go to a question from the GOAT.
Question from the GOAT. Okay, so today's question from the GOAT is not about Pokemon Go, but it was inspired by Pokemon Go. Okay.
Oh, Pokemon Go.
So Pokemon Go, I've been playing it quite a lot, and it is a worldwide phenomenon. Actually, no, sorry, international release isn't out yet. So for those of you, like, I don't think it's out in Canada. So for those Canadians, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But it has gotten people, to go outside, get sunburnt like I am, and become more social. So that's sort of what I want to ask. Within,
So can you explain what Pokemon Go is for those of us who have not heard of this game?
Those people do not exist, okay? Those people do not exist. But Pokemon Go is a augmented reality game that you can play on your phone. You walk around the world and catch Pokemon. And in my case, mooch off the generosity of others by them spending real money and luring Pokemon to certain locations. And
because you've never spent real money on this game.
Yeah, of course not.
You're a free-to-play Pokemon Go player, right?
I have dropped perhaps $10 to $20. Yeah, I know. Dude, I like spending that money. I'm like, this is so worth it. I should spend more money. I'm like, nope, 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 no more money. But anyways, I have met quite a few people playing Pokemon Go. It's
In
fun.
real life.
In real life, I know. Not all of these bots that are in our Twitch chat. But yes. So, question from the goat. Not we're not just going to talk about Pokemon Go for this entire time. But from this is a Pokemon Go has gotten people to like meet each other, to become more social. Throughout the history of like Hearthstone doesn't want you talking to people. It doesn't want you to be social. Right?
Well, it wants you to meet
itself.
up with them. There's firesides.
No. There's firesides, but the game client itself, right? Like,
Yeah.
The game client itself.
Wait, does the game client in Pokemon Go let you talk to people?
Well, no. But the game actually,
like literally puts you next to people, right?
Right.
So presumably they can then curse you off and
Yes.
be racist, sexist, and anti-child.
So my question from the goat
What?
is,
Those are like the most obvious like discriminations.
what would you do, if anything, to make Hearthstone sort of a more social experience like in the game? Because right now you can only emote in game. There's no like clans or guilds or anything.
Right.
When someone adds you as a friend, it's like this small little notification, and there's no interaction. There's no chat, right? There's not even like a general chat where people can like, complain or like, hey,
it's not even like
this?
at least in Overwatch you can talk to people.
Yeah, exactly.
You kind of have to. You have to coordinate in Overwatch though, and if you don't, like you're worse off for the game. But it does mean that you get to hear colorful people say colorful things about.
So, anyways,
colorful
I'll
people.
pose that question to you first. Would you make this game more social, and how?
Okay. I would not. I love what Blizzard did with Hearthstone because I don't like talking to people. I think if I wanted to talk to people, I would be able to talk to people. And if I want to play a game, I would play a game, and I don't need the two forced to be together. I really like the option, and it's because if I'm allowed to talk to people, I would really just like not talk to people. There's no coordination involved here. It's just one-on-one, you against an opponent. Like, I don't need that level of communication with my opponent. I think the emotes are a nice touch. I do want more emotes. I want this limited sense of, like, I really approve of how Blizzard did this, like, limited modes of communication. Like, you can communicate, but you don't have to think very hard about how to communicate. Like, one of the problems with talking to people is that you have to like have this like mix of like reading them and knowing what to say and piecing together a lot of words to make a sentence that has meaning. Like, it's a lot of things to think about, and that's not really what I want to be thinking about when I'm playing a game. In fact, it's one of the worst parts of Overwatch for me is that I have to like listen to people and like understand what they're saying, as sometimes I have to communicate to them. I try to use the in-game commands as much as possible because of that, because it gets in the way, right? Like, the game of Hearthstone is playing cards. The game of Hearthstone is not talking to your opponent. Like, that's in fact, right? Like, you're judged by what cards you play, what your strategy is, RNG, like, those are part of the game. Your opponent communicating with you is just flavor. And you know how I feel about things with like flavor. You want it to be as controlled and as, I guess, polished as possible.
Okay,
so
would you be in favor of something which doesn't increase the sort of like, just interaction as you were talking about, but let's like a tournament system that brings people within the game together to just play the game?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's definitely a good idea. That's what Fireside is. It kind of brings people in. If you had like a sit and go type system, it brings people in. But I still don't want you to be able to talk to people. Like,
so sit and go, but no talking.
Yeah, like I could have a nemesis in in like a round robin format or something. Where I'm like, oh, I lost him last time. I hope I'm gonna beat him this time. Like, that's fine. I can know that they're people. They can have certain personalities, but I don't want to use words to communicate with people. I think that's the worst way to communicate with someone. Like, using words, it's highly inefficient. It's very precise, but it's highly inefficient. And the communication that you need in a 1v1 game with your opponent is not precision. It's like, as long as you can express a general sentiment, you're fine.
I agree. It's interpretive dance or nothing.
Exactly,
You know?
exactly.
Yeah. I too prefer to express my emotions and my hopes and dreams through my arms and through
Yeah,
that
through
interpretive
emojis,
dance.
through like simple phrases. You should have enough of a variety of those phrases that you can communicate a wide range of feelings and emotions and sentiments, but you shouldn't ever at any point make someone put letters together to form words. Um, that's that only detracts from the game, in my opinion. Um,
Excellent.
And
Um,
going back to Pokemon Go, like that's such a downside for me for the game, and why I'll never play that game. Like to actually like that's not why I play video games, right? I don't play video games to go meet new people. In fact, having to meet new people in order to play video games that require teamwork or whatever is like one of the worst parts of that game. Like I want to control all six people because then I'm actually in control. Otherwise, I have to like kind of like give up control to other people. And we've established before, right? Like people are pretty bad at games in general. And when you have no control over them, they get even like, their effect on you makes you even more salty. I don't know. It's not an aspect of gaming that I like. And if I have to like physically like look at them and speak words to them, that's even worse, right? It's like it's making the problem worse.
so bad, man. Anyways, that's the question from the goat. That is it. And next week I will find another Pokemon Go related question to ask you.
Okay, fine. I can see where this is headed. I'll mentally prepare myself for more Pokemon related questions. Okay, Car Good Bad. Car Good Bad this week is it's brought to you courtesy of the Chinese meta. So in China, they can actually measure arena players, sort of. Like they measure by how many cumulative 12-win runs you have in a week. And at the time, this email came to me like a few days ago. So I don't know if they're still number one and number two, but at the time, these were the comments from the number one and number two players in the Chinese arena meta by like cumulative stats. And I don't actually know their name because IND never told me their names, so I can't give them credit. But they were like reviewing our tier list, and they had some disagreements. Some are like general stuff. Apparently, they didn't really like they didn't rate like ping cards or like 1/1s, including Argent Squires. And
Argent
things like
Squire,
that,
best card.
as high as we do, and we admittedly rated very high, right? Like Nazata's first mate, stuff like that. And
Yeah.
both of those guys apparently like didn't, even though presumably the Chinese meta is faster. But whatever, those are like big picture stuff. One specific card I wanted to focus on that they brought up that I thought was very interesting is Shadow Madness. And I bring it up because Shadow Madness really is our lowest rated. We rated, by the way, I think like a 68, I think, Shadow Madness. Yeah, we rated
what?
a 68.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Shadow Madness, which is below cards like Shrinkmeister, Darkshire Alchemist, Shifting Shade, Shadow Word Pain, Auchenai Soul Priest, Northshire Cleric, Valence Chosen, Temple Enforcer, Holy Nova. Like, it's below a whole lot of cards. And it is, just off the top of my head, I think the lowest we ever rate a mass removal. Because I guess it's not really a mass removal, right? It's more like a multi removal. It's more like a cleave.
Yeah, it's more like a cleave, and it is it's one of those situational removals, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a situational removal that requires them to have something small.
You know what? Multi-shot is 66, just to give you a similar costing multi-removal.
Right. And multi-shot, it's less conditional because you can use it against anything.
Yeah, anytime there's 2 minis on the board, you can use it.
Right. And same thing with Shadow. Well, almost same thing with Shadow Madness.
Not
sometimes
quite. You need something that's three attack or below.
Right.
Or else you can't even trigger it.
Right, and multi-shot you can only use on 2 minions. Most of the time with Shadow Madness, you sort of need 2 minions on their side because you're bumping it into their stuff. But yeah, like
you could also use it for the 3 damage of lethal.
Sometimes that was my caveat. I'm like,
that's the best time to use it.
I know, or to get rid of an Annoyatron so you can hit them from lethal.
Right, yeah. Like there's some tricks you could do with it.
Yeah, but Shadow Madness, it's one of those cards. If you ask us why we put it, I guess, so low, it is really situational, and I know that some people definitely value the potential of a card more, right? And we're a little bit more about the consistency. That is why Servant of Yogg-Saron is really low on our tier list, right? it's not about the potential or just the average. It is about sort of how consistent it is as well.
By the way, I do like that no one in the Chinese meta had a huge problem with how low we rated Servant of Yogg-Saron. They are as down on RNG as we are.
They are down. So here's the thing. You were telling me these are the people who have the most 12 wins.
Yep.
Right? So it is not necessarily about who has the highest average.
Yep.
So it is.
It's people who play a ton and are good.
Play a ton are good, but it also favors boom or bust, right?
Right. Like, and even when it favors boom or bust, they don't like RNG.
Right. Well, because you roll the dice too many times.
Right.
Like
Exactly.
You're already rolling the dice with your draft, with this and that, and then you're rolling the dice on Servant of Yogg-Saron, and it's a pretty. I mean, it's a huge dice roll as well. Like, you're pushing all in a lot of times with Servant of Yogg-Saron, and that's not something you want to do. So I can see that, but it is interesting. So, like, players who would succeed in this type of format, number one, have to play a lot, right? So like, let's get out of the way. They are supremely skilled. You have to be very skilled. Number two, you have to also play a lot, because even if you average like 8 wins a run, if you're only playing 5 runs, then someone who averages like 5 can beat you just by brute force.
Yeah.
And then third, it does favor you to sort of, you don't want to hit singles or doubles. You got to go for the home runs, right? You got to go for the home run. So it does make sense that cards like Shadow Madness would be higher, because those are, it's a little bit more of a home run card than something that's just like a Yeti.
Yep, it's true. We value the, because we're our judge. I mean, back when there was a stream, like arena streamer spreadsheet, I was like number 2 in percentage of runs ending at 12 wins, but it's not what I go for, right? Like, I don't go in with an explicit goal of getting the most 12-win runs. I actually go with the explicit goal of making sure my average is high. That's how I view the game. But people have different goals, right? People try hard in different ways. So it does change the the valuation a bit. But it's also like Shadow Madness is awkward. I always hated Shadow Madness more than you Merps, and it's because yes, you can get that loot hoarder or like the sludge belcher and kill it off or whatever and get the huge benefit, right?
Right.
But otherwise, you have to take something that is at most 3 damage to deal 3 damage to something else, and it has to kill the thing that you're dealing 3 damage with. So comparing that to multi-shot, it's hugely limited. It's not even close to how limited it is. Like, yeah, you can remove a taunt, that's the flexibility in it, but you not only deal 3 damage to your target, at most, you may be dealing less than that, but your target has to be able to kill off the target that you're taking, and the target that you're taking has to have 3 attack or less. Like, that's just so many conditionals, one layered on top of the other. And it's not to say, in a match, it'll be stuck in your hand forever and you'll never be able to use it, but there will be turns in which you are forced to use it regardless of your mana, regardless of, anything else, and then it will be a dead card for so many turns. That's all bad.
Yeah, it's definitely extremely situational. Most of the time you do just want that multi-shot, right?
Yep, exactly.
And there are those situations in which Shadow Madness is so good, but that's pretty rare. Like we said, it's a home run card. It's a card that can definitely win you the game just because of those certain situations. But I think it's just important to recognize the context of these players' recommendations.
Yep. And if you're listening here from the Chinese meta, we are actually going to we've been talking. We're changing a couple cards based on your comments. After we reviewed them, we're like, oh yeah, I don't know how this slipped through the cracks. The biggest one that's going to move for those who are listening is the most important one that's going to move is Silverhand Knight. I don't know why that card didn't go down when we were dragging down Pit Fighter. I think it just slipped. It's going down 2 or 4 points.
Nothing huge.
Yeah, nothing huge, but it was commented on why is it that high? And I looked at it and I was like, I don't know why it's that high. I know why it's high. I know why it's Yeti and or better than a Yeti, but I don't know why it's so much better than that. And it really was just that there was some cumulative adjustments where we kept rounding it. and so the adjustments kept rounding to 0, but cumulatively it should have been lowered a bit, and this lasted
Right.
like
It's one
five
of those
rounds
things.
of
It's like
adjustments.
a couple grains of sand over the years
Yeah.
equals a mountain, right?
Yeah. So right now you look at it, you're like, what are, like this compared to Pit Fighter is a 10-point difference. What? It's because at one point it was like a 0-point difference with Pit Fighter, maybe even higher, and we just kept moving one down as we, figured it out more for different reasons. And this one just didn't get moved down. Okay. Anyway, let's move on to the last topic, Class Talk Priest. So one of the things that you also saw when Hearth Arena released its stats of win rates is how crappy people do with Priest. And just a lot of classes, Priest, Hunter, Warrior, they're all below 50% win rate for the average player that uses Hearth Arena. And presumably, almost certainly, they're below 50% for the average player. Just because if the average player wins half their games, these are like the worst classes. And before we go like too deep into like the Priest and why it sucks, which I think we've talked about before, but we can go down a different route this time. I want to make sure people know that just because the average win rate of a class is bad doesn't mean the class is bad. It just means that, or it could mean that people just aren't playing the class right. And the example that I always talk about is the Warrior. Because the Warrior, back in Classic, when it was like also one of the worst classes, was my second best class. And as soon as Blizzard fixed the Warrior after TGT, it became my third best class again. And it wasn't like I can't tell you like one thing that like, oh, I am way better than everyone else who plays the Warrior because of this. You guys see my runs. And we have sample sizes now that are like, large enough that it's not like a total fluke. But you just understand the class and you understand how it fits into the meta well enough that you can do things with it. And to give a little like evidence, I guess, for why I'm not just talking out of my ass right now, I'm also really good at playing against Warriors. So yeah, other people are kind of bad at Warriors, but I have, since TGT has started, I'm looking at my tracker right now. My like overall stats, which you can find on Arena Drafts. You can just Google Arena Drafts and then ADWCTA. I've been using it to track my my OG stats, and I've imported everything else in. I have not lost a single game against a Warrior when I'm going first. Not a single game since the beginning of TGT. It's because I know what's coming. It's because I know all the ways that a Warrior has of actually winning this game, because I'm really good at doing it myself, and I am working diligently to prevent that. And about a 91% win rate against Warriors when I have the coin. When I have the coin, and they're going first. So again, like, it's better to go first than to have the coin, but those are my win rates against Warrior. And it is not like that's obviously not my win rate against other classes, or else I would have a much higher average than I do now, because Warrior is like a very small percent of the meta that you see. It's the smallest because people just don't play Warrior. But it's a pretty stark stat, right? Like 0. What are the odds of that? It's very little. And I think it kind of fits together with my theory that I am just that much better of a Warrior player than other people. Like, at a certain point, I think I was like 2 wins per run above the next highest streamer with Warrior. I think it's a lot closer now. I think we're at like 1 win per run differentials. But still, right? So that's the Warrior. I'm not like that with the Priest or the Hunter, right?
No,
and other people are like that with the Hunter. Like Shady always does like ridiculous with the Hunter, right? I don't think anyone does it with the Priest, but that doesn't mean that person doesn't exist or that the Priest can't do that. Maybe that person that's actually figured the Priest out in the way that I figured out the Warrior, maybe that person just doesn't stream and doesn't like check Reddit or like whatever, right? So we don't know that person. But so just because we say a class is very bad for the average player, or even for like most good players, or for most like top players, it doesn't mean its potential is actually that bad.
Yeah.
Its potential could be just unfigured out. Now, we keep trying to figure it out. It's one of the reasons why we don't just say like, screw Priest, they suck, why am I going to play it? It's why we keep digging with it, and we keep trying to figure out ways to play these classes in a more optimal way. Because it exists, right? If I didn't go out and try to figure out the Warrior, people would think the Warrior sucks more than they do right now. Right? But now you have one person who is like doing ridiculous with the warrior, and you're thinking, okay, so maybe most people like suck with the warrior, some people are okay with it, but the potential is very high. It's just for some reason other people aren't hitting that yet. And same with Hunter with other people. And not yet with Priest, but again, this may not be a function of how bad Priest is. It may be a function of we just haven't found that person yet. So, or that strategy yet, or whatever. So keep that in mind when you're looking at these stats and you're saying like, oh, I'm never going to play Priest again, or like, why would I throw my gold away on that? It's different person to person. And the averages, it's not that they don't tell the whole story. They don't tell any of the story in my book, because they're for people who are just not good at this game. And why would you trust them to tell you which classes are better or worse, right? It's so backwards. Like, I understand, like, with the whole democracy thing that everyone's really into, that you kind of like the opinion of and the performance of average people as a good judge. But when it comes to a game of skill, it's not a good judge, right? Like, I'm more comfortable having average people vote for my president than I am having them tell me how to play Hearthstone. Yeah. Like, they may be equally unqualified to do both, but in one, I have a very good sense. In the other one, you can still make arguments, right? And it's like, oh, that's just how I feel. But no, in Hearthstone, if that's just how you feel and you lose, then you're wrong. It's objective.
Yep. That is very true.
So tying this into this election cycle. So let's actually talk about the Priest.
Priest is pretty bad. That's basically
Damn it! I just went all this talk saying Priest was potentially not bad.
I know. I was like, can we just end it by saying, having said that, we still believe that the Priest is pretty bad.
Oh man, okay. I mean, I don't disagree.
Like, what more needs to be said? We've talked about it a lot. Like, I don't think we need to talk about it even more, about how the hero power is not very helpful in the early game. Throughout like the past 12,000 expansions, Priest hasn't gotten good early game, with the exception of Valen's Chosen, but you still need something on the board. They don't.
Shrinkmeister.
No. That doesn't help you get the board. That helps you keep the board.
Okay, it still helps you get the board. If you have one thing on the board, it helps you get the board.
Right,
so
right.
It's turn 2 magic, right?
Right, but how did like Paladins become so good? It was because they had independent things that helped them get the board, like shielded minis and muster for battle.
Okay.
Right?
So we talked about this. We know your theory. If people are listeners of the Lightforge, they know Merps' theory of why the Priest is bad because they can never get the board. I have a different theory, which is that I actually just got a 12-win Priest last week with Viking Plays, and it's on YouTube right now if you guys want to check it out. And if you were curious what a 12-win Priest looks like, it's a pretty good video to check out. We have some 12-win Priests from earlier in the meta, but this is our first OG 12-win Priest, and I'll tell you, it does not have a lot of early game. It had like 4 2-drops and like enough 3-drops, but then it only had like 2 4-drops. And it didn't have a lot of other things. It did have comeback mechanisms, right? It had 2 Holy Novas, it had 2 Matter Bombers, and those were very helpful. And it had a Shadow Madness, I think. And so we got lucky. We curved out better than we should have. Fully admit that. If you just watch, you'll see us not curving out a shockingly low amount of times. But we also won like half the games we didn't curve out, because you don't have to curve out in this meta.
Sure,
and if you do curve out,
draft AoEs.
The AoEs weren't even that helpful. Like, they were helpful, but they weren't necessary. Like, to have 4 of them, or like 5 of them rather. Like, I think 2 of them would have done perfectly well. And so I think I agree with your like philosophy more before OG. And this is like, we've had this difference since OG started. Since before OG came out, when OG was just kind of like announced and we knew all the cards, I was all like, Priest is gonna do fine in this meta if you know what you're doing, because you don't need to curve out, because all of its weaknesses, like, it didn't get filled, it just got made less important. And so that's how I've been playing Priest, and I'm doing quite well in OG with my Priest. I think I'm averaging more than 8 wins per run. Not necessarily, maybe not anymore. Let me see. With Priest, I am averaging... Okay, no, not anymore. I did a Priest run that went like 3 or something. Okay, but I'm still averaging 7 wins per run with Priest.
Yeah, so Priest can be fine. The problem is still that you need those... Like, if you are playing slow and you're responding, or if you're just putting down stuff, you need cards to be able to respond, right? Mm-hmm. And people know about sort of the inflexibility of a priest. And you've gotten one more buff in Tentacle for Arms, but that is an extremely
Yeah,
inflexible card.
yeah. Like
Um,
I didn't say priest got better necessarily, just because the card quality is so crap in OG.
yeah, yeah.
But the meta makes it okay to play. Like you can actually play a priest in this meta, like a priest, which you couldn't do before. And so yeah, it didn't get a lot of good cards, but that's mitigated by the fact that you can kind of like be a priest. So I think like it's not like I'm sitting here being like priest is my new warrior. Like no, I don't think that's happening. And 7 wins per run may be doing very well for the priest, but it's hardly like a groundbreaking discovery that people will beg me for my wisdom for. But like it can be done, right? Like things happen, and if you like the priest, I'm just saying don't get discouraged. Maybe you're the person that will find the ultimate priest strategy, or maybe you just suck so much with some of the other classes that relatively priest is okay, like what happened with my slump in January, where priest was literally my best class, and it was very sad, very very sad. But it's just like keep faith, man. Keep faith in the priest, and good things may happen. It hasn't happened yet, but I see the signs, right? Like I see the signs, I see the building blocks. Merps thinks that it's missing a lot of stuff in the early game, but I'm saying you don't have to do that, and I see a lot of other good things going for the priest. And I would not be surprised at all if it makes a huge comeback in the next expansion. But even in this expansion,
I could definitely see that. Yeah.
yeah, but even in this expansion, I can see a lot of people who may have not been giving Priest the fair shake, trying it and then like honing it over a few runs, and then actually seeing like pretty decent results that will surprise you.
All right. I think that's it for Priest. It sucks.